Okay, have to break these things up because unless you get so many hits on your videos that it starts to make advertising money for YouTube, they only give you 10 minutes. And so I have to do these things in bits and pieces, which probably isn't bad. You know, it makes you have some discipline. You can't get too crazy. I mean, not that crazy is a bad thing, you just can't get too crazy. Okay, so what did I say last time? I said I'm going to do a better job than Dornach. And you, as a consumer of anthroposophical product, and these are reasonable metaphors. You buy books, you spend money, you send them stuff. I got books you can buy. I'm going to refer to other books you should buy. You know. And I'm saying basically that whatever's going on in Dornach and the councils in America, they didn't get it. They didn't get what Steiner said. They're pretty apt at repeating things that Steiner said. But repeating things that Steiner said or filling up your mind with things that Steiner said doesn't help you be an anthroposophist. Being an anthroposophist is about engaging your will so that you cause in your mind the metamorphosis of thinking that Steiner produced in himself and wrote about in his first 3 books and calls Anthroposophy. Let's talk about books for a minute. Oop, I seem to be in the light. I'm going to move here a little bit. That's probably going to make things hard. Okay, books. Well, there's lots of books in the field of anthroposophy. Lots and lots and lots and lots of books. Dornach and the councils mostly have us studying Rudolf Steiner. It's understandable, but is that the best thing for human beings to do in the age of science, which is read a lot of Rudolf Steiner to the exclusion of other things that they could read and study? Well, what other things could they read and study? Well, my goodness. Wouldn't it be interesting, for example, if Dornach was to say, hey, there's this guy, Owen Barfield. He lived in England. You know, he lived almost 100 years. He lived from the beginning of the century to the end of the century. And he was a friggin' genius. He had an incredible mind, which also translates as an incredible spirit. He was an extraordinary light shining into Western civilization. Let's study some Owen Barfield. Why? Well, because he added to human knowledge, and he added to human knowledge in a way that was very anthroposophical. That is, he brought about within himself the metamorphosis of thinking, and then he thought about what was going on in the world of language and what could be discovered from it, and he wrote all these extraordinary, beautiful books which really blow your mind if you try to wrap your mind around them. Let me just take one of those, okay? It's called Saving the Appearances, a Study in Idolatry. It's very important for anthroposophists, by the way, because in our minds we have a lot of idols, and idols aren't the truth. But having idols in the mind is sort of the way the world is today. It's a very typical kind of thing. Anyway, there's Owen Barfield. He talks in that book about the assumption. He says the assumption is a big thing in modern paradigms of the nature of the world. And what's the assumption? Well, the assumption is that people in the past are like the people in the present, and that there's no such thing as the evolution of consciousness. And that problem drips out of almost everything you read. Evolutionary psychology, for example, and other things like that. History, the study of literature, all kinds of places where it's assumed that people's inside is the same today and the same as it is today 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years ago. That's the assumption. Well, the thing is that Barfield points out, all you have to do is question the assumption, and all the evidence is otherwise. It isn't like there has to be a big argument about it at all. It's important to understand this. It's important to understand the world this way. Barfield didn't just contribute to the world's knowledge, he also contributed to anthroposophical knowledge. He's a great anthroposophist. We should study Owen Barfield. What else did he say? My goodness. Well, he also said that there's not only an assumption, there's a omission. Well, what did he mean by an omission? Well, we grew up in a paradigm that's basically determined by scientific materialism. Most of the words that we have mean things that have been created in the path of development of natural science. For example, mind. Mind today for most people means brain. It means physical matter only, period. No spirit, just physical matter only. And not only that, it gets worse. You talk to physicists, and they go off into the weirdest places about what matter is or isn't. It's sort of not really there. In fact, it's kind of in potential. And it's only there when something happens that causes it to drop out of potential and into reality. And they have these words for it. And they do all this stuff, and they do these experiments, and they explode things in, these big things. I can't remember the name of them right now. Names fall out of my head all the time. Anyway, you know what I mean. Super colliders. Well, good grief. So what's the omission? Well, the omission is that the ideas that physicists build up about the nature of the world, when they're writing their papers and when their papers are being popularized by popular science writers, when those ideas get to the general public, we read them and we say, oh gosh, it's wonderful. It's all this stuff they know about matter and the Big Bang and the heat death of the universe and gosh knows what. And then we walk out into life and we omit that conception. We look at a tree and we see a tree. It's not supposed to be there. It's only in potential. There's no stuff there. There's no relationship between the ideas produced by physics and the way we live our lives. And that's the omission. These are important things to understand. For everybody, including anthroposophists. But you won't get Dornach or the councils in America to talk about Owen Barfield.